was published in 2023, and it states that medical practitioners, healthcare personnel, and any official employed by a public health establishment is regarded as a functionary. And this means they have the obligation to conduct risk assessments, report abuse and violence against specific groups of people, which we're going to be discussing later, and they may even submit an application for protection services on behalf of the complainants in some cases. Then if we look at South African policies, the Maternal, Perinatal and Neonatal Health Policy of 2021 states that intimate partner violence, prevention and response is an essential life-saving intervention, and health workers have a responsibility to identify abuse, do a safety risk assessment, as well as refer to other services. Then the updated National Integrated Maternal and Perinatal Care Guidelines that were published at the end of last year also contains 3 new chapters, which the development of was led by the PMHP. And the 3rd new chapter in these guidelines is on intimate partner violence and domestic violence. So it contains some of the key elements that we will be discussing here today. So let's have a look at the role of the health provider. First of all, we need to be able to identify violence safety. This means that we need to ask about violence when there are clinical or social indicators, and we're going to be discussing that a bit later. We need to be able to provide first-line support, and we're going to be using the abbreviation LIVES that comes from the WHO. We need to be able to ensure safety and confidentiality. So this is things like creating a private environment, both during our consultation, but also within the wider health setting. We need to explain confidentiality limits to the women, so explaining what confidentiality means, and that in some cases, if it's there's potential harm, we may need to inform someone. And we need to be able to assess immediate risk before proceeding. Then we need to be able to document accurately and safely, and Simone will be talking about that. We also need to be able to refer and connect. So the idea is not that clinicians manage intimate partner violence alone. Their link is mostly to have this inquire safely, have this first line response, and then refer and connect to services and other shelters and other needs. Then we need to be able to provide access to information. This can be about things like resources. It includes legal or other services that the women may find helpful. Then we need to be able to assist with how to increase safety, both for herself and for her children as needed. And Simone will be talking about that. Then we need to also be able to offer and provide trauma-informed clinical care. So this includes things like treating physical injuries, providing emergency contraceptives, preventing HIV or sexually transmitted infections. And then lastly, we need to maintain respectful maternity care. So this is things like dignity, privacy, informed choice, and equitable treatment. So it is not the the role of the health provider to solve all the women's issues. It's not to address all the violence-related needs. Remember, it's about that connecting. It's also not necessarily mean everything should be done or addressed in one consultation. It may need a few follow-ups. It does not necessarily mean following up on whether the woman takes the referrals and continues with legal processes, etc. It's also not to provide therapy or convincing her to leave the abuser or to go to other services, but it is there to inform her and support her. Okay. Then I quickly want to touch on sexual abuse and the maternity setting and why language and touch in the maternity setting may be especially triggering for someone who has experienced sexual abuse, whether or not the pregnancy is related to a previous sexual abuse. First of all, health workers may need to touch where the rapist touched. Women may be lying in the same position as when they were raped. Health workers may restrain their shoulders or hold their legs open. And there are a few statements that are often used in the maternity setting that is mostly done with good intent, but it may be the same that a rapist might have used. Things like open your legs, stay still, or relax, and it will be over quicker. So it's important to remember that a woman may not have disclosed sexual abuse to health workers. So it's therefore important to always be mindful of language and ask consent for every step of the procedure, especially touch. Then if we go on to how do we recognize violence and abuse in the perinatal setting, in some countries like America, they recommend universal screening, so asking at every perinatal visit, doing a screening. But in South Africa, in the UK, as well as the WHO, rather recommends clinical inquiry. And that means raising the topic for women who have injuries or conditions or maybe say something that makes the health provider suspect that it may be related to violence, or perhaps they even bring it up explicitly themselves. Okay, now we are going to do another woo clap activity. So, oops, let me do this. I believe you should still have the link in the chat. We can share it again, and we're going to see how many. Okay, great. We've got a few more people who have joined us since earlier. Right. Okay, then I'm going to move on to the next activity. I'm going to start this. So it's a word cloud. And what we're going to do, we have a case study that I'm going to share with you. And then as I'm doing the case study, I'm going to be presenting it to you. I want you to think about anytime you think that something may be a clinical sign of domestic violence, please add it to the word cloud. Okay, it's important to also note that some of these signs may not be a very clear sign of domestic violence, and it's also important to note that if there is something clinical that may be related to domestic violence in a specific case, it does not necessarily mean that every person with this clinical sign is experiencing abuse. But we are trying to, in this activity, identify a few subtle signs or things that you might pick up that relate to intimate partner violence. Okay, so you have a bit of background, a case file on the screen, and you've probably started reading through it already. If you haven't done so yet, you can have a look there so long. There may be a clue or two in there as well. Anything that you think may be a sign of intimate partner violence or domestic violence. Okay, I'm then going to read out the case study. Nomsa enters the consultation room quietly, clutching her antenatal file. She sits down only after being invited, placing her handbag on her lap and holding it with both hands. You greet her and begin by asking how she is feeling. Nomsa nods quickly and replies that she is fine, though her voice is soft and she doesn't make eye contact for long. You go through her history, confirming that this is her 4th pregnancy. Nomsa explains that she has 2 children at home and she had a miscarriage in between. She pauses briefly before mentioning the miscarriage, then moves on quickly to say her 2 children were fine pregnancies. When asked about any medical condition, she shakes her head and she said that she has not had any major health problems. As the consultation continues, you ask about her general well-being. Nomsa hesitates before saying that she's been having headaches, but that it comes and goes sometimes. She shrugs and adds, I suppose it's just the pregnancy. You prepare for the ultrasound and ask Nomsa to lie on the bed. As she moves, you notice that she winces slightly and adjusts her position carefully. You ask whether she has any pain. She shakes her head quickly and looks down, saying, It's nothing, it's just difficult to sleep. During the scan, she lies still, answering questions briefly, with her eyes fixed on the ceiling. After the scan, you begin to explain the results, but Nomsa glances at the clock and shifts in her chair. When you start to ask about her nutrition, she says quickly that she tries to eat as good as she can. She then asks whether she will be done soon because she can't stay for too long. You decide to leave the rest of the nutrition discussion for a follow-up visit and asks whether she has any questions about her pregnancy. She smiles faintly and shakes her head. You greet her politely and she gathers her belongings quickly to leave the room in a rush. Okay, I am going to open our Wook Lab. Okay, I'm going to give a few moments for all the responses to come in. Okay, it seems like the most, okay, I'm going to give another moment or two. Okay, it seems like the most obvious clinical sign or potential red flag that everyone has identified is the late miscarriage that she had. And then we have avoiding eye contact. So yes, that might be a sign of being withdrawn or avoidant. I see a few avoidants. Unemployed. Okay, while that may definitely be a contributing factor to experience intimate partner violence, I am not sure whether it is can be regarded as a potential red flag or a sign in this case. Headaches, definitely, yes. Okay. So showing pain or unexplained pain. Yeah. Let me see. I want to see what else we've had. Not very communicative. Okay. It's jumping around again. Body pain, yes. The handbag, so again, being withdrawn or avoidant. Soft voice, fear of questioning of herself. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, time. I think time. I see time and I see go or staying long. Okay, yes. So having this urgency to leave the clinic may be that there might be something that's or someone waiting for her at home, and she's worried about why she's staying away so long. Okay. All right. Some of the other potential red flags that were in this case study, and I might have missed it because it's quite a big word cloud, so please excuse me if you did put it in and I misread it. Some of the other things we put in is that there were multiple pregnancies. We are unsure in this case whether it's intended or not, but if there are multiple pregnancies, especially if it's unintended, it may also be a clinical or a potential red flag. And then we've got a potential late booking. Okay, it was she's there for a dating scan, but it may be that she is a late booking. So that can also be a potential red flag. She did mention that she was quite vague about struggling to sleep, but a potential sleep disorder may also be a potential red flag. And then you guys have identified the urgency to leave the clinic. Okay, so lastly, I just quickly want to recap that these are only potential red flags. And again, if someone is experiencing headaches or adverse birth outcomes, it does not necessarily mean that we need to look at intimate partner violence, but we need to look at the whole picture. So if there are several potential red flags or something in the way that the woman is talking, the person in front of us, if you get this gut feeling, then it may be worthwhile to investigate. So it's not always just obvious red bruises on a body that we see, but there are other signs we need to look at as well. So the handout will also include a few more potential signs that you can look at. Thank you so much for everyone who participated in the Woo Clap. Okay, so now if we have identified that NOMSA has a few clinical indicators or potential red flags of domestic violence or intimate partner violence, what do we do next? How do we ask about it? So before we actually get to asking, there are a few important things that we need to consider. And we need to make sure that there are conditions that prioritize the woman's safety, dignity, and autonomy. So this is things that needs to be in place at every health facility. There needs to be a protocol or an SOP on domestic or intimate partner violence. We need to make sure that there is a system in place for referral, a resource directory, that we know who's around, who can provide what type of services, when are they available, what type of services do they provide. So we do also provide you, at the end, we will share our resource directory with you. It's a national resource directory, but we really encourage you to find out in your area what services are available. We need to make sure that health workers know how to ask, how to provide a first-line response, and know also what resources are available, what services are available. We need to ensure privacy. And this means to only ask when the woman is alone. We cannot inquire about violence or abuse if anyone else is present, even if that is another family member, even if it's a child, even if it's another woman. It may be a potential abuser's sister or mother. We never know, so we cannot assume. If necessary, you can always tell the accompanying person that you need to be doing a physical examination and would they please step out of the room. We need to establish trust as well. So we're going to begin with general rapport building discussion, routine checks as much as possible before we introduce a sensitive topic. Then we need to assure confidentiality. I mentioned earlier, we need to clarify that whatever she shares with us will remain private. within the healthcare team unless there is legal reporting necessary. And we need to share this with her as well. Then we need to assess safety. This includes things like we need to think about, is there a partner waiting outside, or asking about where she was now. We need to make sure that disclosing violence or abuse may not put the woman at further risk. So we need to plan things like, if we want to give her any documentation, like some information about services available or report, any documentation, what is she going to do with it? And if she is concerned about her abuser asking where she was, for example, what plan can she come up with why she was at the clinic, or why she spent so much time at the clinic? Okay, now I think this is the last WooClap activity, if I remember correctly. So if we now have determined that there are clinical reasons for us to inquire whether NOMSA is experiencing violence or abuse, and we have all the preconditions in place from the previous slide, how can we go about asking the question? What can our first response actually be? So on the screen on your WooClap, if you are still logged in, you should be seeing a few statements on the bottom. If you, just a tip, if you struggle to see on the screen, make sure you turn your phone sideways in landscape view, and it may be a bit easier as well. So what you do, you click on the statement, one of the colorful blocks at the bottom, and you can allocate it according to the number, whether you think the statement or the question is useful, appropriate, and safe to use, then you put it in the green block. Or if you think it may not be such a good idea to use that statement or phrase, you can put it on the pink block. Okay, there are 6 statements, so I'm going to give you a bit of time. And like, thanks Simona, she added in the chat, please remember to press submit at the end. So remember, this is the first response. So if you are thinking of, or the first question, the first inquiry, how do you think you can ask about violence? And remember also, this is not necessarily a clear right or wrong. It might be that some are just a bit more useful than others, and we're going to be discussing that. Thank you. I see a few responses coming in. Okay, I'm going to give a few more minutes. I see there are quite a lot of people logged into the WooClap. All right, I'm going to start going through the answers, but you're welcome to still add your, we're going to start at the top, so you're welcome to still add a few if you want to. So looking at the first one, how are things at home? And I see most of you guys responded that it is useful and appropriate and safe. And yes, it is actually a very good general statement. It's an open question asking how are things at home. So one of the concepts we want to focus on as well is starting broad, starting vague, and then going to more specific questions. Then the second one says, I'm concerned about you. Are you experiencing violence at home? And I see it's quite a mix of some people feel it's useful, others would not recommend it. And yes, it is quite good to say, I'm concerned about you. However, it is not recommended to jump into a direct question like, are you experiencing violence? Also, not to use the word violence or abuse. There's often a lot of stigma or shame around that. So it may be better to use words like problems. Are you experiencing any problems at home? Then if we look at the next one, many women have problems with their partners or people at their home. Can we talk about this? And I see most people have indicated that they think it is useful. Yes, so the many women have problems is an attempt to normalize it, to lessen that shame or the stigma around it, and then inviting the women to say, can we talk about it, is a way to also say, is it fine for you to talk about it? Is it safe? Is it comfortable? Are you ready? So that's the undertext of, can we talk about this? Then it looks to me like you are hurt. Your husband wouldn't have something to do about this, would he? And I see most of you would not recommend it. Yes. So first of all, it accuses the husband already. And it may be that it might be someone else. But also it's a leading question. So it's already planting an idea. This is what it is it not? So we don't want to use any leading questions. Then the second last one says, why do you think you're struggling with headaches or sleep problems? Let me have a quick look. Okay, most feel like that is a useful question. And yes, it may be good to ask about why she is experiencing questions. However, the word why, even though it might come from a good place, the word why often makes someone feel judged or accused. So there may be a different way of asking. I noticed that you mentioned you're struggling with headaches and sleep problems. What do you think that is about? Or what do you think might be causing that? Instead of asking directly why. Then the last question, sometimes stress at home can affect health. Is there anything happening in your relationship that you are concerned about? And it seems like most people agree that it is a good question or good way to inquire about abuse. Okay, thank you so much for participating. We are going to move on. So here on screen, you will see a few more examples of helpful follow-up questions. So this is if you have already introduced something and then you, like I said, we're going to start more broad. Is there something you're concerned about at home? Are you having any problems? Things like that. And then we go on to more specific questions. So some principles on how to inquire include try to ask it in an empathic and non-judgmental manner. Use language that's appropriate, like I said, not using words like violence or abuse. A good idea is also to use the words that the woman herself is using. So if she is referring to my husband just gets so angry, then using that word saying, okay, and what does he do when he gets angry, or something like that, or what does angry mean? And then we're going to use non-leading, open-ended questions, avoiding why, and then explaining the purpose is also a good idea. Like I said, saying something like, I see many patients like this, or many women experience this, and this reduces stigma and normalizes the question. Okay, now what do we do with the immediate response? So we've asked, and now what if she denies violence or abuse? First of all, we respect her response. We don't press further. Okay, we give her time to decide what she wants to tell you. It may be that you are only opening the door, and we need to keep the trust that we have with this woman. So we want to keep this door open and assure her also that she can raise this topic at any time. So it has been shown that this is linked with a higher likelihood of a woman disclosing violence at a later stage, making sure that, well, if there is anything at any time you want to talk about, you're welcome to bring it up. Then we want to tell her about services that are available, saying things like, well, if you feel like you may need services like this is what is available. And then we, if indicated, if it's going to be useful in that instance, we may also offer information on the effects of violence on women's health and their children's health, but we also don't want to do it if it is going to create more harm. So you need to judge that each situation individually. We want to offer a follow-up visit. Okay, so making sure, again, we're keeping that open door. And then lastly, we want to make sure that we make clear, detailed, and confidential notes. And Simon will be talking about that. And I want to highlight that even if disclose is or abuse is not disclosed, if it's not acknowledged by the women, it has been shown that simply raising the topic in a caring and respectful manner and providing educational materials or having a leaflet available if there's a pamphlet in a bathroom facility, for example, it has been shown that it can really help women. So making sure that it is acceptable for them to disclose this whenever they feel ready. Okay. Then what do we do if she does disclose violence or abuse? And with that, we are going to be responding with lives, the first line response. But before we do that, we are going to have a quick break. So I see I am exactly on time, 1 minute ahead. So I am going to give us all 5 minutes to 6 minutes to have a break, and we're going to start again at 7 o'clock. If you have any questions in the meantime, please add to the chat or the Q&A. Thank you.
Stell's colleague at the Perinatal Mental Health Project. We're going to be going into how to give first line support, which essentially hinges around the LIVES acronym provided by the World Health Organization, which is a useful structure to hang one's thinking around. What is it? What is first line support? This is the sorry, I'm having trouble advancing. There we go. This is where you as a health worker identifying the needs and concerns of the person you're with, where you listen and validate these concerns and her experiences, and you help her to feel connected to others. This connection to others is critical to her feeling strong and able and resourced to develop social capital. It's about first line support is about providing a calm and hopeful environment and empowering her to help herself and to ask for help. It is about exploring options with the woman, allowing her to make her decisions, so respecting her wishes, and helping her to find the social, physical, and emotional support she needs. It's also about enhancing safety. So when we're dealing with practical needs and emotional needs, it's important to realize that when you strengthen the one, you will be strengthening the other, and as health workers, we often focus more on the practical because that's what we're comfortable with. But in fact, women who experience violence have significant emotional needs, which you can provide. So even if this is all that you can do, this is the most important care that one can provide a person with experiencing violence. You'll have greatly helped your client if you can work through these simple steps. First line support has helped people who've been through various upsetting or stressful events in general, not only women subjected to violence. So it is a thought through evidence-based strategy. It's also important to remember that this might be your only opportunity to help the woman. So your scope of responsibility is not necessarily to save the woman, and it's not necessarily to stop the woman from experiencing abuse. Your scope of responsibility extends to going through these steps, and it may be the only chance that you have to help the woman. And you may not be able to solve the problem completely, but you may be able to make a significant imprint into a better quality of life and a safer quality of life. So our first steps after disclosure, which can be quite upsetting for us as healthcare providers, is to center yourself and remain calm and present to the woman. It can be shocking. It can cause all sorts of judgments to arise in us, but it's important to try and not show those and not demonstrate those to the client. It can be helpful to say thank you. Thank you for trusting and sharing this with me. And validating this disclosure is very, very, so that's part of validation of the disclosure. It's very difficult for women to disclose on the whole. So by validating that this is important and that she said it and you thank her for it and you acknowledge it, is a form of validation, and it tells her that she's not alone. And so many women in these circumstances have that abiding feeling of loneliness. And when you reach out and connect with her on an emotional level, you're disrupting that feeling or that belief that she has. Quite often we want to jump in with saving, and I've been in this situation many times, wanting to find all the solutions and jump in, and that can sometimes be too much. It can lead us to providing our own solutions that are not necessarily appropriate for the woman. So that is something that we just need to bear in mind. So I think it's going to be useful to go and look at the lives strategy. This acronym is helpful to go through. Some of this I've discussed before, and there are a series of short videos provided by the World Health Organization that you can use, you can refer back to, that goes through each of these steps briefly in an infographic, and we'll just show the first one or two here for you. A lot of it reinforcing just there.
Listen with empathy and without judging. To listen means paying attention not only to what she says, but also to what she does not say. Being empathetic and providing her with the support she needs requires creating a safe space, putting yourself in her shoes, approaching her in a friendly, non-judgmental manner, and showing understanding for how she feels. How can you do this? Showing interest in her story, make her feel heard, listen patiently. Do not judge her. Show her that you understand what she says and validate her feelings. Do not assume that you know what is best for her. Do not interrupt her. Do not finish her sentences. Give her the space to share her story with you. Respect her wishes. Listen closely to what she's telling you. Take her wishes into account and be supportive. Learn to listen with your eyes,
giving her your undivided attention.
Your ears, truly hear her concerns and wishes, and with your heart, treating her with respect and caring.
Inquire about her needs and concerns.
To inquire about her needs and concerns means finding out what is most important to the woman. You must respect her wishes and respond to her needs. When you listen to her story, pay attention not only to what she says, but also to what she implies with gestures, body language, or words. She may talk about her physical, emotional, or economic needs, express concerns about her safety, or describe the kind of social support she needs. You can help her express her needs and make sure that you have understood her correctly. This is the only way to provide the survivor with the first-line support she needs. How can you do this? Phrase your questions as invitations to speak. Ask open-ended questions to encourage her to talk and express her concerns. Show interest in her story. Reflect her feelings, ask for clarification, and explore further as needed. Give her space to express her needs. Make her feel comfortable to talk. Help her identify and express her needs and concerns. By inquiring about her needs, you help her express her wishes, making sure that you understand her correctly and enabling you to support her.
So those first two sections of the acronym, I think, reinforce what went before the break. But we kind of moving into the kind of engagement session with the client and going deeper and deeper, and looking at validating another's experience, as I mentioned, is really an indication of letting the person know that you are listening attentively, that you are present, that she has worth, that you respect her as a person, that you're trying to understand her situation, and that you believe her without any conditions. It lets her know that while her situation might not be normal, her feelings and responses are normal, and that it's safe to express them, and that she has a right to live without violence and fear. So let's watch this clip quickly.
Validate. To validate means showing the woman that we understand and believe her, that she has a right to live without violence and fear. You must assure her that what happened was not her fault and that she is in a safe environment where she can express her feelings.
You must show her you are listening attentively to her, that you understand what she is saying, and that you believe her without judgment.
This is the only way to provide the survivor with the first-line support she needs. How can you do this? Tell her that no woman deserves to be mistreated by her partner, that it is not her fault, and that she deserves a life free of violence and fear. Make her feel comfortable to open up. Provide a safe space where she can share her story and her feelings. Let her know that she is not the only one who has experienced violence. Show interest in her story. Let her know that you understand and believe what she says without judgment. Learn to validate without judgment. Violence against women is never the fault of the survivor. You can make a huge difference as a health worker if you listen to, believe, and support the survivor.
I'm not going to be showing the enhanced safety video because we're going to be speaking through this section in a bit of detail with some slides, but it is available on the WHO website and with the links that we'll share on your handout. But the E in LIVE stands for enhancing safety, and this means to help a woman assess her situation, and she's the best assessor of her situation, and to make a plan accordingly for her future safety. So many women who have been subject to violence understandably have fears about their safety. There's some women who may not think they need a safety plan because they do not expect that the violence will happen again. A lot of women, even with recurring violence, stay in a pattern of denial that it will recur. But I think it's important that as health providers, we explain that it's unlikely that partner violence or domestic violence is going to stop on its own. And that in fact, the pattern is it tends to continue and may over time become worse and happen more often. So assessing and planning for safety is generally an ongoing process. It's not just a one-time conversation. You can help her by discussing her particular needs and her situation and her context and the logistics, and then explore with her options and her resources. What does she have available to her practically in terms of the people in her life? And you can do this every time you see her as her situation may change and as you potentially get to develop a better and better plan for safety. A woman who is sexually assaulted often knows the person who assaulted her, and it often happens at home. Not always, but often. It's if it is somebody she knows, it is important to have a discussion with her whether she feels it is safe for her to return home, and then act accordingly. And we'll speak in a little bit later about what to do if the two of you decide that in fact it is not safe for her to return home. But that is a discussion that one needs to have. And bear in mind that survivors of violence are often very skillful themselves at knowing what times are more dangerous than others, when the violence is likely to escalate, what are the triggers. So if the woman is feeling safe right now, you might need to help her plan for a future crisis now. This is the best time to do it, when she's out of crisis. And when things are calm, she's more able to think, she's more able to consider options and strategize and problem solve. So it might be useful to look at what are typical patterns and what can be predicted, and rely on her lived experience to drive that insight. It's important never to instruct a woman to leave if she's not ready to do so. Many women want to stay with their partner. Many women need to stay with their partner or another person who's violent towards them. Leaving a violent partner is the most dangerous time for women who are experiencing violence. The act of leaving has been shown to be related to 75% of intimate femicides, which occur during this most dangerous time. So, within 3 months of leaving. So that is something that women often are aware of, that there's a heightened risk with leaving, and they're afraid of that. So leaving must be done very carefully and planned, very strategically, in order for it to be safe. And it's best done in partnership with the National Shelter Movement or an NGO who is equipped to manage that safety as well. As I mentioned, all of that. So we are going to walk you through a really clever management flow around enhancing safety that was developed by Estelle for this presentation, and step by step walk through the kind of algorithm of approaches. We need to assess immediate risk. Today, if the woman returns, what is the risk to her safety? And we're looking predominantly now at physical safety. Is she worried about her safety, or is she not so sure about her risk? If she's unsure about her risk, there are a series of questions that one can ask to establish whether there is risk or not. And these come from a WHO guidance. And there is an indication that if women say yes to 3 or more of these risk factors, that in fact she is at immediate or high risk to her physical safety. And one of the things that you could say to her is that it seems to me, from what you are telling me, that you are at high risk of being unsafe. I'm concerned about your safety, so you can bring yourself and your own concern into the discussion, and then say, let's discuss what's best to do so that you won't be harmed. And here you're inviting her into a collaborative discussion where she has agency and power. So you're modeling that this is a possibility for her to have agency, to have choice, to think through her situation. And this is where you would want to refer to a shelter or a place of safety. If you if she says she has fewer than 3 yeses to those responses, then there is a separate flow that you could follow through. But just to note that if you are needing to make a safety plan for her, there are key elements to include in a safety plan. This is detailed in your handouts, but they are quite useful nitty-gritty nuts and bolts of discussion elements that you could bring into your safety planning. And again, if you look at the evidence about what helps safety planning, has been shown, when it's been done well, to really reduce the risk of harm to women. You would cover the discussion around a safe place to go. If you need to leave in a hurry, where could that be? You would discuss things like, how would you plan for the children? Would you go alone? Would you take your children with you? Is there another place that they could go? You could discuss transport. How will you get there? It's important to think about what items to take with you, which documents, keys, cash, clothes, other things that you might need to take with you for you and your child. Can you put these items, can you put a spare set of these items together in a safe place, or leave them with somebody just in case? Can you think about some of the financial issues? Do you have access to money? If you need to leave, where would this be kept? Can you get it in an emergency? Setting up these strategies can make an enormous difference to a woman's safety when she does decide to leave. Importantly, who is close to you? Who can you trust? Is there a neighbor you can tell or call? Is there a friend, a relative? Is there somebody you can activate to call the police when they hear sounds coming from your house? So that's when you would make a safety plan in this kind of relatively calm situation, before a crisis, outside of a crisis, as opposed to referring to a shelter when you have established that there is immediate risk. And those are the elements of the safety plan that I mentioned. The woman might want to discuss rather staying at home. And that is something that we need to respect, even though we really might think very, very strongly that she should leave. Women, as I mentioned, often know that it might be safer, in fact, to stay at home. And in those situations, you need to open the door for her to come back to you. And understand that she may be putting herself and her children at more risk of violence if she does leave. So we also need to think about discussing documents with her, SASOG cards, ID documents, birth certificates, any formal documents about ownership of property. These are things that she should also have copies of or keep in a place that she can use, that can make a huge practical difference to the process of leaving. If she needs to organize things or do things, if she needs to take paperwork with her to the police, she needs to think about discussing what she'll do to the paper, not to arouse suspicions. So where is she going to be? How is she going to explain to a potentially controlling and paranoid or aggressive partner what she's doing with these things? So that is something that to bear in mind when one's discussing documents, hiding them, any brochures and pamphlets, any numbers need to be, it's very helpful to keep them in places in which they cannot be found, or numbers can be anonymized or given another person's a name, a fake name. When she decides to stay at home, one can equip her with thinking about how she can practically avoid discussions or incidents or environments where conflict can escalate. Think about what normally triggers it and how one can actually avoid those. If there are unavoidable discussions to be had, where can these take place so that she will still be safe, perhaps in public or in a place where she can leave easily? She should stay away from rooms with weapons and teach and engage with her children about how to be safe and to run to a place of safety, and potentially lock doors as well. If she decides that she does want to leave, we need to make plans with her and leave and to ensure that this leaving takes place before she tells her partner, for the reasons I've already stated. If she tells her partner she's going to leave, it puts her at a greater risk of higher escalated violence and femicide. The last S in the acronym is support. And again, I won't be showing the video here, but it's available for you. And in this context, support means to connect a woman with other resources for her physical health, her emotional health, her safety, and her social support. So here we need to identify for her what the most important issues are at the moment. We need to say what would help the most if we could do it right away. We need to be sure that a referral will address her most important needs or concerns. And the core principles of a referral are very important to hold quite closely, because so often in these situations you spend a lot of effort in making a referral and the referrals are not taken up for many complex reasons around shame, stigma, mental health, low agency, low sense of ability to plan. So we need to work together with her to discuss who she has available, help her identify all the different options. In her support circle, does she have a family member, a friend, a trusted person in the community she could talk to? Does she have anyone who could help her with money if she needs that? And we really do suggest that you invest some time in advance of these difficult conversations of knowing who's who in the zoo, what support and resources are available in your particular setting. Have the contact details ready. There are the national directories and the national numbers, but you may have organizations in your local community, in your network, that you're not sure what they do and what they don't do and when they're open and when they're closed. So it's best to have a relationship, if possible, with these entities. Know whether you can trust them, understand their processes of how they do or don't want to accept referrals. What are the procedures? Can you have a formal referral agreement established with them? How is it best for you to contact them? Some of the resources may include helplines, support groups, crisis centers, legal support, mental health support, social workers, etc. It's usually not possible to deal with all her concerns at the first meeting, as we mentioned, so you need to let her know that you're available to meet again and talk about other issues. She may not want to do any of this at the initial engagement with you. So it's often difficult for people who have experienced violence to make decisions. It's part of the process of undermining that happens in a violent relationship. So it can be frustrating for us as health workers if she doesn't seem to be taking any steps to change her situation. However, a lot of women need a bit of time. So we always have to respect her wishes and decisions and communicate that she can come back to you and that she has access to you in whatever way you can make appropriate. If she expresses, oh, I can't do this, I can't go there, I would never go there. If she comes up with a whole lot of barriers to referrals, it's important to hear them and then potentially work with her to creatively problem solve. Is there somebody you could leave your children with? If your partner would suspect you going somewhere, can you develop a story about to cover your why you were attending a social worker or a psychologist? Can you say that you've got a charge job, or you're visiting your friend Sally? If she does accept a referral, there's some things you can do to make it easier for her. The more information you can share with her, the better. Where, how to get there, a name of the person that she'll see. You can offer to telephone or make an appointment for her. This would be of help. Perhaps she doesn't have a phone or a safe place to make a call. If she wants it, you can provide the written information that she needs. So, you can give it to her on a piece of paper or a pamphlet, but make sure that this is kept away from the potential abuser. It is really, really helpful to have somebody to go with her. If there's a trusted person who can escort her and be with her for that first, often terrifying appointment, the unknown, that can be really helpful. Always check in that if she has any questions or concerns, and check that she understands the situation as you do. Just ask her to kind of feedback about how she sees the scenario. We will be sent in the handouts giving you some of those national referrals and helpline resources. So once we have had the discussion and we have established through the woman's articulation of the situation that it's safe for her to return home, it is important to refer to a social worker. Remember, we've established this is a situation where a person has disclosed violence. Refer to a helpline. If available, refer to mental health professionals, because the mental health conditions or symptoms often keep women locked in relationships of violence, and sometimes disrupting unhelpful cognitive patterns and unhelpful behaviors and unhelpful emotional patterns can really help a woman to be strong enough to plan to leave. And we need to document clinical notes very carefully, and make sure that, and I'll speak about that in a minute, but no records to be taken home with the woman herself. We should offer to refer the woman to the Victim Empowerment Office or a family violence NGO for assistance, and also speak about protection orders at a local magistrate's court, and we have details on that in the handout. We can, for physical and sexual violence, and for the cases where there's damage to property or stalking, a J88 form can be filled in by the healthcare worker and submitted to the police, and then she can go and report the case to the police, and then protections should be put in place for her. So that is another option. When it is not safe to turn home, we need to get her into a national shelter, into a shelter, unless there is a safe alternative place for her to be referred to, like a friend or a relative, where the man will not have access or not know where she is. If she is afraid, she can also, at any point, she can phone her closest SAPS Victim Empowerment Office, even while she's at the clinic, and they can help set that up. As we mentioned, we advise her never to declare to the abuser that she plans to leave because of risk of escalation of violence. If the abuser is the breadwinner, when applying for a protection order at a magistrate's court, one can also apply for emergency monetary relief. I'm going to quickly get into the situation of documentation. At this point, it's absolutely critical that documentation is carefully considered because of its legal implications and because of its potential utility in supporting subsequent actions that she might want to take. So when you are writing notes, it is important to tell her what you'd like to write down and why you want to write it down, and ask her consent for her to do for this to happen. We have to follow her wishes. If there's anything she doesn't want written down, if she does not want written down, we should not be recording it. Good documentation strengthens a woman's legal protection. Medical evidence, if it is good quality evidence, can be used in court to support application of protection orders. If subpoenaed, healthcare workers may need to testify on their notes, and failing to document properly can harm both the patient's safety as well as legal outcomes. And there are examples of protection orders being denied for lack of evidence. Of course, records should be kept confidential, with access restricted only to authorized staff. And no notes should be made on any documents or files that might be visible to others, for example, x-ray slips or chart on a bed chart in a hospital setting. We need to be cautious about what we're writing and where we're writing it and where we're leaving the records. Some settings that for greater confidentiality in some facilities, they use a code or a sticker or a special mark to indicate cases of abuse or suspected abuse. Consistency is key. Ensure that the records on the clinical notes match each other, and there are no discrepancies which can undermine a medical legal value. Let's have a quick look here at the kinds of statements that one might put in one's clinical notes, and think about which ones of these you think might be useful and which ones may be less useful. I'll give you a minute or two to look through the potential options here. So writing suspected violence at home, she seems afraid to return home, is actually not necessarily a very useful statement to put in the notes, because there's an assumption of violence and an assumption of emotional state. And there's no indication of what has been observed or any action that has been taken. The second note, patient was tearful during consultation, required pauses in conversation. Yes, this is a useful thing to write, because it's reflecting your clinical observations and it is not a subjective interpretation. There's a 4-centimeter bruise observed on the left upper arm. This is a useful comment because, again, it's a clinical detail of injury. You may even want to put in a diagram to support that. The patient seems very unstable and upset. This is not useful because this is your subjective interpretation. There's no evidence to support your assumption here. You would need to make that useful. You would need to put in specific indications of her being unstable and upset. Shaking, stammering, distracted, tearful, shouting, non-responding. You would need to put those details for that kind of statement to be less of an implication and more of something that's objective. The patient states, my husband hit me with his fist on my left arm last night, in quotation marks. Yes, direct quotes are very useful. They include detail here of who, what, and where, when, and that can be used as evidence. The patient claims she was beaten is not helpful. It's not her direct words. There's no detail. And in fact, you can see that's typical doctor writing. It's unclear to read and too small to read. So it might not be useful evidence. The patient has several bruises that look quite old. Is not helpful because it's vague. It's interpretive. If you think they're old, you would need to put in the coloration and the detail there. Patient was referred to this NGO and the appointment was made for 10 o'clock on the 12th of May. Yes, those are useful notes because there's a clear action documented with your steps that you have undertaken to offer her care. So, what about reporting the violence? And this is something a lot of people struggle with. When is it mandatory? When isn't it? What is our responsibility? Well, there is legal guidance here. It is mandatory to report violence as a healthcare provider if the person is under 18, is either being abused themselves or witnessing abuse. So if you know that children of your patient are witnessing abuse, we are obliged to report that. An elder over 65 is being abused. and an intellectually or physically disabled person is being abused. So this includes all types of domestic violence as stipulated in the Act, physical, sexual, emotional, economic, intimidation or harassment, spiritual abuse, and coercive or controlling behaviors. So this is, we are beholden to report them. These cases need urgent referral and formal reporting to a dedicated social worker or the police. The person making the report is entitled to have their identity kept confidential unless the interests of justice require otherwise. A person who fails to comply to the mandatory reporting is actually guilty of an offence. So this is the Domestic Violence Act that Estelle mentioned earlier. What about other victims who don't fulfill that category? All other victims should be informed of their rights and referred for support if they want it, but we do not have to report other types of victims. These are the forms that are available for reporting. And a Form 2 needs to be presented, which needs to be prepared, which is an assessment of risk, and a report in itself, and that this report, if you don't have access to it, will be provided in your resource pack. So here, just to quote from the Act, any adult person who knows or believes or suspects on reasonable grounds that an act of domestic violence has been committed against a child, a person with a disability, or an older person must, as soon as possible, also complete Form 3, which is an affidavit to report an act of violence. So we've got Form 2 on the left, Form 3 in the middle. And in cases of sexual abuse, a J88 must also be completed by a healthcare practitioner. And that's a more detailed report. Many of you will be familiar with these. But for those of you who aren't, they look a bit intimidating on first glance. Form 2 and Form 3 are 1 pages. The J88 is a 6-pager, and it is something that we're obliged to do under those conditions, and one gets better at doing it over time. I will just take a pause here for 1 or 2 questions before we go and look into the needs of you as the healthcare provider. Estelle, are there any questions in the chat?
Thanks, Simone. Yes, we have 2 questions here. We have someone in the chat asking, we have a big problem regarding GBV. The police do not get involved, and us as private institutions have no way as to how to go about the legalities. So I would actually, in that case, it is difficult. It's unfortunately a reality in our country that we often faced with the police not wanting to get involved, but they do have the legal obligation according to the Act. And I'm going to read it out now, just a quick snippet. It says, any member of the SAPS must, at the scene of an incident of domestic violence or as soon as possible afterwards, or when the incident of domestic violence is reported, they must render such assistance to the complainant as may be required. So this is things like making arrangements for safety, connecting, obtaining medical treatment. So they are actually legally obliged to respond to that. So yeah, I'm not sure how useful it might be, but to actually mention the Act and say, if you want to, it's Section 2 of the Domestic Violence Act, that they do have the legal responsibility to respond to all cases of reported domestic violence. And then we have a question in the Q&A as well. Simone, it says, if she doesn't give you permission to record what she is telling you, how are you able to give evidence if required by the court? Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a difficult discussion, and I would urge the health worker to really spend some time in trying to gently persuade her to give that permission, and to give the rationale that without note taking, it's very, very difficult at a future time, should she need to prove that, or to show, for anyone to show evidence of the abuse and violence, that something has been documented. Um, Reassurance of the confidentiality, and a clear discussion on protection of her data and confidentiality, um, and potential and restricted access is can also be sort of detailed for her to try and reassure her, so she knows both about the rationale and the confidentiality. Um, and then yeah, in that situation, if she does not give permission, then you can't. But you could write, client does not give permission to to record details um, regarding potential um, danger at home, or something like that.
What
Um,
I would, if you don't mind me adding, what I would also
um,
propose is, remember, we don't necessarily have, it doesn't have to be either or. We can explain to the woman as well that what we would like to record. For example, she might feel comfortable if we write, there's a bruise, the size, whatever, this color, or the patient is reporting headaches or general pains or abdominal pain or struggling to sleep or whatever. So there may be that she feels comfortable in taking some of the notes and not necessarily that she disclosed violence or abused or discussed all of
yeah,
that. So I think it's a discussion with her.
yeah,
Thanks.
excellent. Thank you.
That's our questions that we do have at the moment. So I
Okay.
think you can
So I'll continue and speak about your needs. As your needs in dealing with women who are experiencing violence are important, your emotional needs. If you're caring for women who are going through this kind of extreme and highly distressing experience, you may have some strong reactions and emotions yourself when listening or talking to them. This may be especially true if you have witnessed or experienced abuse and violence yourself, or maybe you're experiencing it now. I think the first step is to, just like we did with the women themselves, is to listen and listen to our emotional world, to be aware of our emotions, to make sure that we get the help and support we need for ourselves. In order to be able to help others, we have to be held and cared for ourselves. It's not luxury. We ourselves are the essential part of the toolkit in terms of providing care for others. So our own mental health, our physical health, is something that deserves attention, just like our patients, we dedicate our lives to the attention of our patients' physical health. So we need to disrupt this idea that self-care is a luxury, and really look at seeing it as essential to sustain us for who we are, but also to sustain us in our work. With that in mind, uh, uh, sorry, I see there's a slide that's been taken out. So before I go on to the next slide, I'd just like to invite you to consider what works for you in terms of self-care, and to kind of connect back in with what makes you feel safe and well and held. And it'll be different for everybody, and don't necessarily don't necessarily follow what other people tell you is best for you. For you, it might be a regular therapy. For somebody else, it might be exercise or a combination. Some people find yoga very regulating and empowering. Others might find spiritual connection with a community. It might be important for you to vary the self-care options that you engage with. So ensure that there's some self-care options where you are connected with others, because we are often well through being with other people. And there's self-care activities where you can be quiet and on your own. There are self-care activities that you can do that work with your creative side. And that can be as simple as putting something in a garden or in a flower pot, or cooking with thoughtfulness and mindfulness, or playing music or singing music in the shower. Find stuff that works for you and make a plan to do it. And make a plan to do it in lots of different small, accessible ways. It doesn't have to require going and sitting on the top of the highest mountain in the lotus position for 7 hours. Try and think about how you can do it while you're boiling the cup of tea, while you're actually having your cup of tea or coffee in the day. We have additional trainings that are available to you should you be interested in knowing more. We have a Better Care book on maternal mental health that is free online, which includes some mention of violence and working with women who've experienced violence before, when you are with them during labor. We have a self-care course which we recently designed which is CPD accredited. It's a brief 6-hour self-care course which will help you think about burnout, compassion fatigue, depression, and how to address those as healthcare workers. We have various training videos online on our YouTube site, which you may want to look at. And we have other training offers in our compendium of potential trainings that we can do in workshop or webinar form that you may be interested in looking at. Please contact Estelle if you are interested in any of these. Would also like to raise awareness of the FIGO workshop that we will be running. I think many of you will be at FIGO. And on the 4th of October, which is before the main conference starts, we will be hosting a workshop. So sign up if you'd like to attend, on how to integrate mental health care into maternal and child services. It's a 3.5-hour workshop, and there'll be a sort of a panel of about 4 or 5 of us facilitating a very interactive discussion there. Unfortunately, it does cost a bit. But we would like now, before we end, are there any other questions or comments coming through on the chat, Estelle?
There was just a comment from somebody on the note-taking, the documentation, saying her understanding is that you can document your history and findings on your medical records without the woman consent, as it's part of the medical history and clinical examination, but then you need consent to if you want to share it or take any photos. So yeah, I think it's again just that discussion with her on once you want to take the following steps. And you can also, for example, record that you have inquired about domestic abuse or violence, and you don't have to write the response if she does not give consent to that, but you can ask that, write that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments?
I see someone's asking, I'm assuming that's about, oh, it's about the survey. Yes, please. If you are, so we have a short survey This is not for CPD purposes. This is for our own purposes. We really want to work at improving and making our presentations as useful as possible. So if you want to help us with that, please complete this quick survey for us. And if you are not registered with the HPCSA, yes, you can add your nursing council number, or you can just leave that blank if you are not registered with any of them. Thank you. Any other questions?
Can I ask a question, actually? So in one of the first slides, you mentioned about how common intimate partner violence is. Is there a reason why they don't recommend universal screening if it is so common?
Simone, do you want to answer, or shall I have a go?
You have a go, thanks. Yeah,
All right. Yes, so there is a bit of a debate about whether or not to include it, and there are pros and cons of each. So some of the advantages is that, yes, you may be able to identify more women, you may be able to refer more women. Again, by asking this question, you are normalizing the inquiry, so you're reducing the stigma. However, in many settings, I think especially in South Africa, you may actually be creating more harm if you do routine or universal screening. For example, if you do universal screening and you actually don't have services that you can refer women to, that is a huge risk of harm. It will obviously add to the burden of already overburdened healthcare staff, healthcare systems. You can also, by making it compulsory to ask every time at every visit, it may become routine for the clinician or the practitioner to ask it, and they may not use that judgment that they have themselves, that intuition that they have to recognize, be able to recognize those red flags and be able to pick up, is this something I should be concerned about? What other signs should I be looking at? So then it may just, you may actually miss a few cases that way as well. And yeah, it may be for the woman as herself, if she has to, for every single prenatal visit, fill in the same form, whether or not she's experiencing abuse or violence. It may be uncomfortable, especially if she is experiencing it, and what if she reported but nothing is happening, or if she did try to reach out for support, nothing is happening. So yeah, that's why I think in South Africa, our guidelines, our policy, we don't recommend it, as well as the WHO. Thanks. All right, any other questions? I see we are also at our time.
Yes, end of time.
Yeah,
I'm very proud of ourselves for finishing in time.
Yes.
That's the one thing Simone and I are not good at, is keeping time. But I'm very proud that today at least we got the presentation in time. So
I do want to end by thanking Kendall Burrard and Lizette White and the others at SASOG for this opportunity. It's great to reach this audience. Yeah, so please, we're hoping there'll be further opportunities for other topics in future. So your completion of the survey is very valuable to us. Don't just be polite. Tell us how we can do it better. And thank you to Estelle for leading the design of this 2-hour webinar. I hope it was useful for you. I trust it was.
thank you.
Yeah.
Before I forget, I must share the resources in the chat. So let me do that quickly. I'm gonna share it with the team at SASOG as well, for you guys to. I'm not sure how you distribute it, but I'm sure you have a way of distributing or making it available. But let me quickly see if I can share here as well.
I just also want to thank the two of our speakers. It was an excellent talk. I think it's a field that we don't always think about. It was extremely well presented. Thank you so much for making it interactive as well. I think it kept all of us on the edge of our seats. Yeah, I think there's no questions because we probably so overwhelmed of all the information we got out of this talk. It's a bit out of the ordinary of all the other academic talks, so it was really well presented. Thank you so much for both of the speakers, and thanks for Kendall for doing most of the organization.
Thank you, Lizette.
Thank you.
Right, I've shared the resources in the, we've got the handout, which includes a summary of what we said, the infographics we shared. It's got some links to additional things, and then we've got the national helpline resources. So it may be a good idea to print that, but then use the back of it or another paper to add your own local resources. And then I've added the forms 2 and form 2 and 3 as well. Right. Thank you.